Well, the calendar flipped over to 2021, 4 months ago, but now it's finally time for our 2021 DC United season preview show, and we're thrilled to help us do the honors. Welcome in our good friend James Graham from DC United Kingdom here on Tried and True, the DC United post-game / 1 week to go till preseason podcast.
Hey, James, how's it going?
I'm very well. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're excited to talk some soccer with you, and it's almost time for the season to start. Very exciting times.
Yeah, James, what's first of all, obviously separated by the ocean from us, how are things in the UK? How are you and the family holding up?
We're doing all right at the moment. We've got some good things happening next week. We're allowed out a little bit, so lockdown's slightly easing. We're allowed to go to a pub garden.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah. We're allowed to have a nice pint of beer. I cannot wait for that.
Britain's always got their priorities straight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pint is always priority. It's the two P's.
No, but is it going to be warm?
No. No. I mean, today's been weird. If we're going to talk a quick bit about weather, it started off.
I was talking about
the beer. Soccer? Nah. Weather. I'm British. We'll talk about weather. Beautiful sunshine. Went out for a walk, and it was had this on, had a jumper on and a coat on because temperature said it's going to be cold. Walked out. I'm sweating buckets. What the heck? We get to the park. Clouds come over, and I'm literally like, right, I'm absolutely freezing right now. It's just, how does that happen when you go from being sweaty to freezing your nuts off?
April time in the UK.
Yeah, that is April in the UK. But in other things, pandemic-wise, things are actually looking pretty decent at the moment for us. The vaccination program's going incredibly well. One of the best in Europe. We've got, I think it's 30 million plus vaccinated now of the adult population. So
Nice.
I'm still waiting for mine. I'm not old enough just yet.
Yeah.
Even though I just had my birthday yesterday, I'm just putting that out there.
Oh, happy belated birthday.
But
21
I'm still
again,
not
right?
old. Oh yeah, 21. I'm always 21.
We're not going to sing to you.
But no.
We'll spare you that.
But no, not quite old enough to have the vaccination just yet. But I know plenty of people who have had it, and I'm really glad that it's happening, and we're going to be a step closer to normality again.
Nice. Well, we'll cross your fingers that you're up soon. We've all been fully vaccinated, fortunately. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. We're all very fortunate, but we'll cross our fingers for you.
And on the football front, James, there's a couple of test events from what I understand that they're hoping to do later this month or into the next month, and then hopefully by the time the Euros roll around and stuff, we'll be back to quote unquote normal. Is that the plan?
I think so. They're doing a couple of tests with the cup games. So I think the FA Cup semi-final is having 25,000, I think it is, at Wembley.
Okay.
Does anybody know a team that's playing in that? I just polled the group real quick.
No.
Stop.
No, we won the league earlier, so.
Sam's excited because Leeds beat Man City, which was impressive, by the way, man.
A man down, yeah.
We've been out since November.
I'm not even going to say anything about Leeds. And then I think the FA Cup final, they're aiming to have 45,000, so 50% capacity, which is just going to be insane. So there is test events happening soon, and I'm really looking forward, and I'm so excited to be able to not hear fake crowd noise on the TV, because that is really irritating. Right?
I completely agree.
It's just like, you see a shot, it goes wide, and then you hear the crowd go, yeah!
Yeah, that's right.
It went wide.
Somebody hit the wrong button.
Clip. So, no, it's gonna be good, and things are looking up. Euros wise, I hope it's done in the right manner. If it's a case that the cases are starting to creep up again, I don't want it to happen. I'm very cautious on this. Always have been. I just don't want things to go through another lockdown, because a winter lockdown here was tough. To say the least.
Yeah.
We had it from New Year's Eve, because they didn't want to do it on New Year's Eve, because they thought everyone's just going to go out anyway, so they did it the day before. Work that one out. and then we've been in lockdown pretty much ever since then. So it's been a tough few months.
Well, hopefully we're on the up and up. Transitioning a bit to your role with DC United. Obviously, you've been around the community longer than we have as a show. But for any of our listeners who don't know you, can you talk a little bit about DC United Kingdom and how you've built up the UK network over there, if you will, and of course, obviously, unfortunately, there are fans of other MLS teams over on the island. So, what can you tell us?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's all started back in 2019. So obviously, long-time DC United fan ever since the Jaime Moreno days, really. So pretty much the very beginning. Jaime Moreno obviously played DC United legend, but he played for my team in the UK, Middlesbrough. Yeah. So if you need a UK team, go and follow them. Not doing great at the moment. We got beat by Barnsley where Daryl DK scored. So
well, Daryl DK scores every time he plays these days, right?
He's on fire at the moment. He's insane. But yeah, so we started in 2019 after the visit to DC back in 2018. Obviously, I came to a Screaming Eagles tailgate. Loved every minute, and I just thought, you know what, I want to do something back to the community. And I've done podcasts before, never successful really. Obviously, I would still be doing it if it was. And it just it just snowballed from there really. And the guys of MLS UK show, they were kind enough to sponsor last year. We've got a huge MLS UK community, which has helped. And it's just kind of branched out from there. People who know people, word of mouth has been absolutely fantastic. And the show's just growing. And like you guys, we've had some amazing guests on my show. Hernan Lozada, Bill Hamid recently, Russell Knaus, who's been on 5 times now.
Wow.
He's basically my co-host. So no, it's been fantastic. And I love everyone who reaches out to me to just say that they listen to the show. It really, truly, it's humbling. I love it.
And I believe you kind of started before kind of the UK network, right? Or am I mistaken in that?
So the MLS UK show started in 2018. I think it was. They're on their 4th season this year. Okay. So they were kind of a really big influence on me. When I heard them doing their show, and I thought, you know what, there's actually a good following over here in the UK. So I was like, let's get on it. And there's quite a few new UK fans of DC United since I started doing the show. A few of my mates have started following. Oh, yeah. All right. That's always good. Yeah. Can't argue with that. And they do stay up as well with me.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. I was crushed the other day when they moved the Earthquakes game to 11 Eastern our time, which is kind of painful for us, but much better than what you deal with on a regular basis. How do you? So 8 p.m. now is like the standard kickoff time here at Audi Field. Yes. So that's 1 a.m. your time.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
What's a typical match night look like for you?
So I'll end up just playing a bit of FIFA. Once my wife's gone to bed, which is usually 10, 11 o'clock in the evening, and then I'll just play a bit of FIFA. I'll watch a little bit of TV, just to keep me tied off. Maybe just play some Football Manager, and then it gets to 1 o'clock. I'll get the game on, see whichever way I can watch it, whether it is through VPN or whether it's on in the UK, which does happen quite regularly now. And then it gets to about 3 o'clock in the morning. I head to bed, maybe have about 3 hours sleep, get up ready for the next day.
I don't think I can complain about a late kickoff ever again now. No, that's dedication, my friend.
I will say, though, James, you've been kind of an influence. We have another UK listener on right now. Logan Armstrong 24, is listening.
Hello.
He said UK here as well.
If you're not following me, come and follow me. But no, it's great to actually see some UK people watching the show now. Thank you. But no, I think there's been a couple of games where I've taken a sleep before the game. But the one I remember most is the Montreal Impact game last year at the MLS is Back tournament.
No, I'm trying to forget that one.
That was, I mean, we all want to forget that one, but it happens. I think that was a half 3 o'clock kickoff for me. So I went to bed at about 9 o'clock in the evening, about now, and slept through, got up at about 2:30 in the morning, and then that was me ready for the next day. So I'm expecting that to happen when it comes to the Earthquakes game.
Yeah.
So
I'll get a nice kit beforehand.
is that actually easier or harder being a new dad? Like with an infant that doesn't really sleep through the night? Do you actually find that fits well?
He's been good recently.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
We've been sleep training him, so he's sleeping through quite a lot. Apart from, this morning he was up at 5 to 6. But over the last week,
no.
he's been sleeping through quite well. And then yesterday, he was up at 7:45.
Does
I'm
he
not going
own?
to argue with that.
Yeah, hey, that's a good day. Does he own any DC United gear yet?
Yes, he does.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah, it's his first baby suit that he wore ever in life was a DC United one.
Wow, love it.
Well done.
And I have evidence of it as well. I've got a picture of it. So.
I'm sure the wife loved that.
Oh, I mean, a good friend of mine, Sarah, she sent it over from the USA, and it was just like, I've got to do it. It was just so.
Is that Sarah Colossi from
It is.
Switch
Yep,
the
Sarah
Pitch?
Colossi.
Yep.
Yeah, she sent it over, and it was just like, oh, he's so small.
No. Yeah, I've got a whole network of DC United like podcasts and writers and everything like that. I got to hook each other up.
Absolutely. And I think a good friend of all of ours, James Lambert, he's sending over the cherry blossom scarf for me.
Oh, nice.
So,
Yeah, we were talking. Michael Black saw that in person.
Yeah,
is it nice?
It is a nice scarf. You'll enjoy having it. I could not bring myself to pay the club shop prices, but it is something I'll probably regret moving forward. But,
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm trying to think the last time I actually had a scarf. It's many years ago. But you know what? It was a limited edition one, and it was cherry blossom. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't argue with cherry blossom.
That's right.
Just bring the kit.
I
Come
know.
on.
Did you see they did the stadium? It was super pretty.
It really was. That was just so nice. But again, it's not the kit. I want the kit.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh man. So transitioning into on the field, James, we're going to be talking a lot this episode about what this 2021 season looks like, and I got to ask you, maybe you've had a chance to watch more of the preseason action than we have, but where is your head right now as we go into this season with a new coach and much of the same roster and some early injury challenges? What's your outlook for this season?
It's cautious optimism. Is the phrase I'm going to go with. I think we're going to see some entertainment on the field. Whether that's good or bad entertainment, there's going to be plenty of goals. We've seen Lasada's stats in his career, and the fact that he's never managed a game which was a 0-0 draw speaks volumes. So, saying that next week it's going to be a 0-0 draw, isn't it? It's going to happen. But no, I think this year the fact that our youngsters have had a season already, they've had some good experience and some tough times last year. I think that's going to put them in good stead for 2021. Mm-hmm. You're right. We've got some injuries. That's going to be tough. Bill's out, Paul's out, just to name a couple. Jordi Reyna's out. It's going to be tough for that first game. Maybe it's the first 2-3 games.
Yeah.
And it's still transitioning in terms of a new style of play. And I think today's game against the New Jersey Metro Stars, the fact that it was 1-1, I think that was a good result.
Yeah.
Especially away. And Eric Sorga scoring again against them.
Yeah. And their one was a PK, so.
Yeah, well,
It was.
I'm
Chalk
glad you
that
brought
off a
that
little
game
bit.
up because I checked to make sure our Twitter feed was up, and Julian Gressel tweeted just as we went on the air. I'm going to read it to you guys, but I'll censor it for the for us being able to keep the adult content box unchecked. But he said, first corner of the game, New Jersey Red Bull fan yells, "F you, Gressel." Made me smile, and I just thought, man, it's good to have fans back. Looking forward to next week. And I think that says it all. I mean, we had the chance to talk to Kevin Paredes a little bit a couple weeks ago, and we asked him if he's excited to have fans back, and we laughed a little bit because he's like, I don't know, man. I played my whole career with no fans in the stands. He from youth soccer with small crowds, and then makes his MLS debut last year with no fans. But for the guys who've been around for so long, I think it's just going to be amazing to have fans back. The energy levels are going to be so much higher, even with a small crowd.
And now we can never have a player come to us and say, "Oh, I didn't really hear what people were saying in the sidelines."
That's right.
Obviously,
It's a lie.
they're just not paying attention. But no, I agree. It's completely a blessing to be back in the stands.
No, it's going to be good to hear the chants, and hopefully that support section just gets going again, because that's what we need. We need a few beer showers as well.
Yes.
That's a good point too. I wonder how they're gonna do that. I mean, in theory, so you have to wear a mask the whole time except when you're eating or drinking. I assume they're gonna sell beer, right? I mean, that's gonna be a moneymaker. So
Yeah.
I guess there will be beer showers then, right?
I mean, really let's put a pause on that. I don't know if I'm ready for people to throw
Maybe I'll just dump it on you.
their backwash like your
Yeah,
backwash.
when you think about like how hygienic that always was. Get a couple beers in us though, and we're gonna be like, do it.
Oh, man.
Here's a good question for you guys. So obviously you go to the tailgates. Are they still going to happen?
So that is a good question. We can talk from the Screaming Eagles perspective, just from what they've told us so far. The plan is absolutely to resume tailgates. However, in the kind of smaller these limited capacity games at the beginning of the season, I don't know that they're going to do it. I do know for the opener, we just saw an email come out a couple days ago that they're going to do. There's a new bar that opened up just a couple blocks south of the stadium, and so they're going to have kind of just like a pregame gathering there. I don't know if it probably at this point just not sure how many like members are going to make it to the games. Does it make sense and all that? But when conditions allow, they'll be back for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But, yeah, it seems more of like a let's go to a restaurant and follow the guidance that we're still underneath, and then when things open up towards the end of the season, we can really get back to normal and start tailgating really hard.
Yeah, James. I mean, you've experienced a Screaming Eagles tailgate. Is that even like a thing in the UK? How does it compare to the pre-game atmosphere?
I mean, it's difficult because it's been a long time since I've been to a game over here in the UK. I mean, just to kind of put it into context, I've been to more DC United games in the last decade than I have to games over here.
Oh wow!
Wow,
that's shocking to hear,
Yeah.
James.
It's strange, but when you put it into perspective, the local team here is Cheltenham Town, who are in League Two.
Okay.
So it's not the cost of a game is way more expensive than it is at DC.
Oh
Yeah.
wow!
Even in League Two.
Even in League Two.
What's a ticket run non-pandemic time for Cheltenham Town?
I think it's around about £35.
Wow.
So that works out about $45.
Yeah.
That's steep.
Yeah, for a League Two team. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was roughly the same cost as when I used to go to Middlesbrough when they were in the Premiership. It was like, how does that go? I mean, I know there's this north-south divide, but the quality of football was a bit different. So yes, the pre-games in the UK usually is you go to a pub and have a few pints. Mm-hmm. It's generally how it goes, and then you'll have a walk down. But it's compared to a tailgate over in your neck of the woods. It's such a different experience. I so enjoyed the tailgates.
Yeah.
Both times that I went, because it's such a happy atmosphere. There's no animosity or anything like that. That's what I love about going to games over in the USA, is the fact that you don't hear of any violence or any scraps or anything like that between opposing fans. It happens occasionally, I know that, because I have seen it, but compared to how it is at Millwall
Yeah.
or Leeds, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what Logan is saying in our chat. He's saying that the atmosphere is definitely very different, and that y'all tend to take the fun out of it when it comes to opposing fans and the atmosphere.
James, have you had a
Neither.
chance to do an away day here in the States? Have you been to a DC United away game?
not yet. No, that is definitely on the bucket list to get that.
We'll
done.
get that on the itinerary once things open up
Yeah.
again.
Exactly. Yeah, I would love to go to. Well, do I want to go to Rebel Arena? I've heard it smells a bit.
I mean, their stadium's already empty, so the social distancing.
Yeah, it's easy to get a
be
ticket
taken
there.
care of. Yeah.
That's a good question. What for us? What's your favorite away day? I mean, I know we've all been to a bunch.
Yeah, I think mine have mostly been on the East Coast.
Mine too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jersey's.
Atlanta's a pretty awesome place to visit, but I have other biases there.
Yeah, it's on our list for sure.
Yeah.
I think the Atlanta experience is a different level of MLS almost, and yeah, I have to go with that. It's just so fun. Philly's a good shout too.
I was saying I had a lot of fun in Philly last
Philly's
year.
we're talking about drunkest places I've been watching a soccer game, which is like my level of fun, I guess. I don't know. I think there's a relative, like some sort of causation there. Like I was having the most fun in Philly and Atlanta, and so I'd recommend those two as like if you're gonna do one like away trip, that's what I would. That would be my shout.
Yeah, Brian Greenberg.
We've added some things to the soundboard here for the 2021 season,
and we immediately regret it.
No, not at all. Brian Greenberg is inviting us all to Atlanta, which is definitely on the list. I think for September.
Yeah.
So James, if you can make it over in September, that's
Yes. I would love to go to that ground because it looks amazing. I would love to do that one. I think the other stadiums that I would love to go to in the States, I wouldn't mind going to the Exploria Stadium in Orlando.
Oh yeah,
that would be quite nice.
Okay.
Because of the atmosphere and the wall that they have there, and it just looks like it would be entertaining. And I wouldn't mind going to the Seattle Sounders, CenturyLink.
Yeah, so actually they just renamed it to
Lumen.
Lumen, yeah, good shout. They change it every couple of years. I've actually been there for a soccer game. It was a lot of fun. It was a season opener a couple of years ago. I just happened to be on the West Coast, not a DC United game. They played New England, but it was cool. And I'll tell you, to me, that game was one of the closest, and I've not been to Atlanta yet, but one of the closest to like a European experience when all the fans get into it because the whole stadium gets in on the chants, which I think is a challenge in MLS sometimes. It's largely just the supporter section, but the painful like Seattle Sounders chant, I mean, it was just like, shoot me now, like we got to stop this. And it was just for 20 minutes straight. But it was a lot of fun. And the pregame experience there actually reminded me of Europe a little bit. You go to a couple pubs beforehand and you do kind of the march to the match, which is through the city streets and stuff. So it was neat. It was very neat.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to American Outlaws. Don't sleep on Minnesota. I've been to their stadium. It was for a U.S. Gold Cup game. But that was pretty fun. But yeah, it was the same thing, kind of going to a bar, everyone hanging out, and then doing the march. I mean, the American Outlaws they try to do that every game, is kind of march to the game. I never thought about that as potentially having like a European influence, though.
Yeah, it's neat. So James, before we let you go, I got to put you on the spot here a little bit. Fast forward to September, October this year. Where are DC United in the standings? Are we talking about playoffs? Are we talking about where do we find ourselves at the end of the season?
I think we sneak into the playoffs.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near the top, mainly because it's going to be our first season with Lasada and the transitional year of a new style of football. But I still think we'll get enough out of it to get into the playoffs and make it past the first round.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
I'm going big here.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, is that a home game or is that an away day? Because now it's one game.
If
so
we're sneaking
in, it's got to be on the road, right?
It has to be on the road, yeah.
Wow.
Definitely. I mean,
oh man, sign me up. I'm there. Let's go. I can't wait.
James, I also want to know, we're getting into this a little bit, but who do you think is going to be the most important player this season? That's something we're going to touch on later. But what's your take?
Yeah, Pines. I think Pines is going to have a huge season. He had a great end to 2020, I thought. I think he was one of our standout performers. But I genuinely think he's going to have a huge year for us. The fact that we'll be playing 3 centre-backs, it means he's going to play the majority of the games. As long as he stays fit, I think he's going to have a huge, huge year for us.
Yeah, I think we're going to count on him a lot. And like you said, he's poised for a big jump. I'm excited for him. Yeah.
And I'm going to put this out there.
Okay.
At the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't had a US men's national team call up.
Full team. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd
I was
love
crushed
that.
when he
Big on
got
that.
cut. Yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, the reality is on that, James. The U.S. MNT have some fixture congestion to contend with this summer
Yeah.
between the was it the Leagues Cup? What the heck? Nations League. They got to play the final of that. Then they're going to have the Gold Cup at some point, and then the crazy new octagonal qualifying for the World Cup. So I'm actually with you there. I'll double down on that. I think Donnie gets a call up this year.
So, James, last year we didn't score a lot of goals. We're hoping for more this year. Who do you think is going to be the DC United Golden Boot winner this year?
Frederick Briand.
On goal?
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
Hey man, I've seen some of those practice clips, and they're crossing a lot of balls in, and that
They
leads
are.
to them. So I mean, not a bad shout.
I think Losada might resign if Owen
Oh,
Gold wins
man.
the Golden Boot.
Oh no.
Honest answer, I think it will be a striker. Believe it or not, I think our strikers will start firing goals, but it's not going to be Kamara. Because he'll be offside.
Oh man,
I think it'll be Sorga.
Oh wow.
Right.
I would love to see
There's like
that.
6 options now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Sorga's going to have. I'm going to say he's going to make it to double digits.
Oh no.
Man, somebody else on this show
These
made that
people will
prediction last
hold
year.
you to it.
You should know by now. I'm Mr. Optimistic. So.
I appreciate it, James. I
You-
appreciate it.
You get punished for being optimistic around here.
Oh, that's not what you were last year.
I was going to say Sam can tell us that.
You get punished for being a DC United fan.
James, we do have a question again from Logan Armstrong 24 on Twitch. He says, I've always wondered this. Can you discuss with James the difference with learning football as a kid? Is it like your comedy films? I personally feel it's a bit toxic over here. So what do you think
That's a
about
good question.
I mean, over here, you get bundled with a team, and that's it. You can't change your allegiance.
Yeah.
So growing up for me, it was a case of my first game that I went to was Middlesbrough versus Oxford, and that would have been now 29 years ago.
Wow.
Just to show my age, I was 4 years old at that point. It was on my 4th birthday, and we won 4-2. So I remember it's one of my earliest memories, that one, and it's one of those ones where, because I was at that game, I ended up going to more. I ended up becoming a season ticket holder from 1995 to 2010. So I was there for quite a number of years, through the good days and the bad days, and some absolutely amazing European nights. I'll never forget them.
Oh
Yeah.
But my first football shirt, I should have said jersey because I'm on an American,
That's right.
was Rangers.
Wow.
And I actually still have that somewhere. It's about this big. It doesn't fit me. But that was when it was in the Ali McCoist days. So it was McEwen's lager, and it's a blue version of our strip. That we have now.
Did you ever play as a kid?
I played as a kid. I was still, before the pandemic, I still played as a goalkeeper. In 6-a-side when the goals are 3 foot high, and obviously Sam, you guys know how tall I am.
Pretty
It makes
tall,
a mockery.
yeah.
I mean, it tends to be a case of when a penalty was given away, wrongly, usually, I'll say that now, I'd kneel down and goal. So I just spread my arms out and saved most.
There you go.
That's funny. We'll have to get you on when you come to DC. Sub for our
Sub
team.
on our. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're always looking for a
absolutely.
goalkeeper.
Yes, for sure.
Why not?
It'd be fun. Yeah.
But otherwise, when I was growing up, I used to it was either in goal, or because of my height, I was a target man up top.
Nice.
So yeah,
It's funny how that
great.
works. You know, you either score goals or you stop them.
Yeah. If only I had the fitness to play up top. James,
That's why I'm playing goal now.
Yeah, right. The last question I have for you is, since you kind of alluded to it, what's been your favorite away day as a fan in the UK? Whether that's within your country, or whether that's a European night away. What's been your favorite away experience?
Well, I haven't been to any European away games. Money.
Yeah.
Sure.
Fair.
Yeah, they're expensive over here because you got to pay for flights and
Yeah.
into international stuff. It just bumps the price up. And then you say you go into a game, then it goes even further. Am I allowed to say a neutral venue?
Sure.
Is it
Wembley?
Old Wembley.
Oh, Old Wembley, yeah.
Old Wembley. I was fortunate enough to go to Old Wembley 3 times to see Middlesbrough play in the cup finals, and we didn't win any of them. And the one cup final
sounds like a Leicester experience.
Leicester beat us.
It must have been that must have been League Cup then, not FA Cup, right?
That was a league.
Yeah.
Actually, no, you didn't beat us. Did we tie that one? Yeah, we drew that game because Emil Heskey took it out of play and then brought it back in and then scored.
Oh no!
Not that
hey, you got to do what you got to do, right?
We're not bitter, but
not bitter or anything, but
No.
that would have been us in Europe, and I thought we were because I thought it was golden goal, and I was gutted when it didn't happen. But yeah, Old Wembley, the history, the tradition, and just the smells, the sights, the view angles, it was just something else. And
yeah.
I was a young kid at the time, and it just had that drive down from the northeast, which ended up being like a 6-hour drive. Go down Wembley Way, and just to see that stadium, the Twin Towers, was just it was something else. It was absolutely beautiful. I will never forget those days. I've been to the new Wembley, but not for a football game, for a rugby game.
Okay.
And that's a stadium and a half. The way it looks, I was right at the top. I was 3 rows from the very back, and I was watching the New Zealand Argentina game. And New Zealand, they always do the haka before every game, and you could hear every single word of the haka.
Wow.
Even though you were so far away, you just got goosebumps from just being there. It was just that was an awesome experience. And if I go down a normal ground route rather than Wembley, I think it would have to be I've been to a few now. I probably want to say Goodison Park.
Oh yeah.
All right.
That's a fun day.
It's not bad there. I mean, the seats are wooden, which is interesting to sit down on.
Yeah.
I don't fit terribly well in those seats.
No, I don't think anyone does, to be honest. I think that's why they've done it.
It was raining
in
the
the
day we
away
went.
section.
Yeah, I think that's standard, right?
Yeah, but anyway, that was a good day. We had a good game. It's in the corner, so you get to see good action at one end. I think, but to go for worst, I will give you the worst one as well.
All right.
Was Southampton's old ground before St Mary's, called the Dell.
Okay.
And the reason for that one, in the away section, they had massive pillars, so you couldn't watch the game.
It's not
And
bad.
the
Technically in the
Southampton
stadium.
keeper at the time, Bruce Grobbelaar, swore at me. I asked for his autograph, and he told me to off.
Nice.
Oh no.
Hey, that's what Gressel was.
You'll never forget.
Oh no, he's 7.
I was 7 years old. I can't tell you.
Oh no.
Oh man, I know you ended on the negative, but you just have me like so excited for away games again. I'm so excited for you to come here and for us to experience that with you, but also for us to be allowed, into England and maybe do some games with you there too.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, James, it's been great to have you on the show. I know it's been a long time coming, so thanks for staying up late and hanging out with us for a little bit. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you if they don't already follow you?
Yes, so over on Twitter, it's at DC United Kingdom. Facebook and Instagram at DC United Kingdom FC. On YouTube, just search DC United Kingdom and subscribe over on there as well. That'd be great.
He gets a lot of fun player interviews, so
For sure.
definitely worth the follow.
Always good content, James. Thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much.
All right, we'll throw it to break, and when we come back, we'll give you our thoughts on the 2021 DC United season right here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast. Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast, presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Find Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast, presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken, will be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
We're back here on Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast. It's the 2021 season preview show, and I don't know, guys, nothing gets me excited for a full season of soccer like talking to one of our friends in the UK, man. James is such a character. It's great to have him on.
I appreciate having the positivity because sometimes I'm alone on that ship, so I like it when he brings
I think
it
you're
too.
safe for now. We haven't kicked a ball yet.
It's the beginning. Oh, we've kicked
Have you met you guys? Like, come on.
we have kicked a few, and it has. I don't know. We haven't
Yeah,
been
you
able
haven't
to
heard
watch.
Joshua talk yet.
He scored significantly more goals in the last couple of preseason games.
Oh, man.
We think, not having been able to actually see them.
Yeah, you know.
But it does remind me that one of my favorite days of the year is always whatever day the MLS schedule comes out. You start penciling in travel, you start looking at it. It's such a cultural experience to go to different places and have that experience.
It is.
Obviously, it's the same in the UK too.
And let me tell you, this group chat blew up with the travel. Like,
Oh,
if anyone
man.
ever is thinking about like going to an away game, message us because like one of us is probably thinking about it. And it
Yeah.
wouldn't be a lot to convince us.
That's so true, and I know that's I totally agree, Michael. Like that day is one that I typically have penciled in because we normally know when it's coming. And this year it was late, and we had CBA drama, and then they're trying to figure out what they're gonna do with the Canadian teams, and it just out of left field, it was like, surprise, it's here, and it was like, oh my god. But yeah, I can't wait, and I think just where we're at now as a country in terms of vaccinations and things, like I feel like I'm allowing myself to get excited about it because like with the track we're on, like we're gonna get to do it again this year, and I at this point, man, I don't know. I hope the team kicks butt, but I don't even care. Just to be able to get back to normal, get in the stands, have some fun. I'm ready.
It's mind blowing to think like, and we were fortunate enough to get all tickets. We talked about it, James, but like in 7 days, we're gonna watch DC United with our own eyes in the flesh. It's gonna be. I don't even know what to do.
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna
There
say
will
my
be
PSA
tears.
is like everyone like still social distance and make sure you're wearing your mask in
Yeah.
public and get your vaccine if you're able. Like we've mentioned, we're all vaccinated, which is why we're in person together again.
Yeah, this is our first show together in
I know.
so long.
I just wanted to point that out. Like we're doing our best. Everyone still needs to do their best to be safe. So that way we continue on this projection to positivity. Sorry, and
We're all.
that'll be my like mom chat for the moment.
No, it's so true though. Like we're all so excited about this, but we've got to keep working so we can keep reaping the benefits. But we do got to talk about this season. It's
Got to. I'm excited about it.
yeah,
for the
and-
first
and-
time in a while.
and if you've been living under a rock for a little while, things are quite different in the black and red. We've got a new head coach, which I don't know that any of us would have predicted a year ago. But Hernando Sada is at the helm, and the side looks a little bit different in terms of personnel, but I think in terms of tactics and style, it's going to be real different.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing here is that even just watching them or hearing about the things, players are playing in different positions now with a different philosophy, and that's changed so much for every single player. And so we almost have to go through and just rethink DC United as a whole I'm not saying it's going to be amazing at the beginning, but it's definitely going to be different, and I'm excited for that.
So I decidedly think it's not going to be amazing at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys follow us on Twitter, we live tweeted the press conference.
So there goes the optimism.
No.
Yeah, who had money on Sam sucking the optimism out of the room?
That's not my point. My point is that if you follow us on Twitter, we there was a press conference last week that John live tweeted, and Losada came out and said, we're not ready. It's not going to be great the beginning of the season. He was visibly disappointed with the fitness levels of this team, and then visibly frustrated when the media kept asking him about that, because I think we were all kind of shocked that he came out the gate and said, no, it's not going to be there for the first several games. And people kind of kept pressing him on it, and you could tell he was frustrated. He's like, it's just not. They're not where I need them to be. We've seen a bunch of different tweets from the players talking about how this year is so different. They're doing different weigh-ins. They're, fitness levels, the expectation is so much higher. So I mean, I think it's just a whole new ballgame. And I've said that on previous shows too, is I feel like the level that Losada is bringing the team, like he's raising the floor of the team. Like the ceiling we still don't know yet, but just the floor of this team is being brought up to a new level, and I think we can all just appreciate that right off the bat.
And it's a very different mindset than what you got from Ben Olsen. Love the man to death as a coach, but every time he got on, he was almost always positive, not choosing to call anyone individually out, and not that Losada did that, but you never really heard negative things from Ben. It was mostly taking it on himself, but going into a season with a coach who's saying, we're not there yet, it does set your expectations, but it also is a bit, it's refreshing, and that's kind of what you were hoping for after having Ben Olsen as coach for more than a decade. You've definitely got a new guy in there, and we'll see if that ends up panning out for us.
Yeah, and I think it shows that we're not settling, right? Like there were so many times when Ben came on and it was after a string of hard games. I remember specifically last season, and he'd say like, well, we were away and then we took a point against the number one team in the league or whatever. Like he was trying to kind of mitigate and say like, well, we wanted to settle for this and settle for that.
Yeah, we're not going to settle for anything.
No, he
it's
said,
not happening.
And he said, John, that was the quote you took out, that he said that I want fans to expect that we're going to go out there and try to win every single game. And we're going to at least be like within shots distance of winning every single game. And that's such a different mentality than what we've been used to.
Can I pull cold water on that a little bit? Maybe that's a little bit of naivety. He's never played in this league. And
sure.
He's only coached one full season as a professional coach.
He didn't say we were going to win every game. He said that we're going to go out there and try to win every game.
No, but I think I know what you're saying, right?
But that's different from MLS. We're not going to go out. He's not going to go out there for the ties or the.
There are some times though. I think that you're playing a 3-game week. Midweek, you're going to Portland. Like maybe you don't need to play to win that game.
I think it'll be interesting to get his perspective on the travel challenges in a few months after he's dealt with it. Because I mean, we go to San Jose week 3, right? Mm-hmm. So like. That's like flying. That's like a European away game for Bears-Goat, right?
You're right. But I also think that he talks about young players in a very different way also. And I think that the way that he's training the young players is probably very different. And we still have a small roster, right? So like you kind of can't get around that. But like Leeds mindset, Bielsa, he looks up to him. Like the way that they train is that the entire team trains as if they're all of the first team. And then whoever's doing well that game, like those are the people who are starting. But that's very different than training your starters versus like your noticeable second string, right? And I think that when you train your entire team in a first string mentality, you have more flexibility for when you have those 3-game weeks or when you have those weeks where you're traveling, that players are more readily able to slot in. Granted, those players for us are younger, so like it's not going to be like a 1-for-1, but I think that they're going to be more ready to meet those challenges than we were last season.
Well, and that's going to be even more important this year because we've joked a little bit on Twitter about having 5 substitutes this year plus the new concussion protocol, which
ridiculous.
Strongly in favor of the concussion protocol.
Not the concussion
No,
protocol.
we all are exactly. But yeah, I mean the 5 subs this year was something I was a little bit surprised to see was back, but. The more I think about it, and had a good kind of interaction with some of our friends at Black and Red this morning on Twitter, I actually think that could really benefit Losada's system, even without the extreme depth that some other teams in this league have. But Losada came out and told us they can play about 60, maybe 70 minutes at the style he wants right now.
Yeah, he did so.
You've got 5 subs that could then come in. Right, and so at the beginning of the season, when all the pieces aren't quite there, maybe that is an advantage, right? When you bring some guys in with fresh legs, because the style demands fresh legs almost more than it demands raw talent at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And so I'm with you guys. I don't think this is going to be pretty for the first couple of weeks, let's be honest. But I do think, you get to mid-season with this team. You've got some folks back from injury. Everybody's fit. I could see 5 subs being pretty regular for this team just to try to really go that, balls to the wall style.
And so much of that also depends on the game situation you're in. Obviously you'd love to be up 2 goals in the 70th minute and be able to kind of shut it down and tone it back a little bit. We've yet to see whether that's something that's Losada looks for. To your point earlier, Joshua, you do go into some situations saying, okay, this is what we need to monitor expectations for. Maybe getting a away draw after a cross country trip is a good thing. So I think if he's able to adjust and know what he's looking for, but what you're saying about the 5 subs, being able to shift 5 people out when you're saying we need to defend for 15 minutes is very different from saying we're chasing the game. We need fast guys up top ready to go. And we'll talk a little bit more later in the show about the current status of the roster and kind of how we expect things to be going. You've got some challenges and a lot of unknowns with a lot of new faces coming in.
I will say, though, like the style that he is saying that he's going to play is not really like a sit back ever style, right? It's like it's a very much offense is the best defense mentality, and it's just constantly pushing and running up the field and really trying to press the line as high as possible and keep them in their side as high as possible. So I do think the mentality might be the same regardless of kind of if you're up, or obviously it's a different game plan if you're up versus if you're like chasing the game. But I think that the style of play doesn't change a whole lot.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam, but I will be very fascinated to see if we, because we open the season at home and then we have 3 straight away games. One's the cross-country trip to San Jose. We've got New England before that, and then we've got Columbus, the defending MLS champions, after that. I will be interested to see if we can find ourselves in a situation where we grab a lead in one of those games. Is Losada interested at all in anything that resembles parking the bus? And I think to Joshua's point from earlier, does that catch us out?
Right.
Because of the way this league is constructed, right? Like we go up 1-0 at Columbus, we're in the 70th minute, we're still pressing forward, and then all of a sudden we lose 3-1 because we get caught out. Like it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a learning experience.
That's where the fitness comes in, is you need to be able to, make those runs so they're not getting the breakaway, right? That's where it comes in. But I think San Jose, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like our only Western Conference away game,
Minnesota
right?
as well.
Minnesota's home, though.
Minnesota's
Right?
home.
Yeah. So, but I think it's almost
And you
better.
get it out of the way early, which is nice.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's beneficial to us that it's coming at the beginning of the season, because Losada is kind of already saying, like, not that it's going to be a wash, but that, we're not going to be where he wants us to be. Potentially, he's going to still be trying things out. The team's still getting used to the style. So I think that that's possibly beneficial to get it out of the way, because in MLS, you don't really need to be good until mid-season.
I feel like we've heard that from you before.
Yeah.
It's the truth, right? Well, are you going to deny it?
It is the truth, and it bleeds into sort of my outlook on this season. I think this is when I look at the schedule this year and the way in which breaks are built in and when players are going to come back, I think it's a 3-legged season for DC United, which is kind of what it was last year, except the first leg was 2 games. The second leg was that crapshoot in Orlando, and then the third leg was the whole season. But this year, I think you've got those first several months where you're trying to learn Losada ball. You're getting players trickling back from injury, guys like Paul Arriola, Steven Birnbaum, Bill Hamid.
Some big names.
Yeah, and then you hit a Gold Cup break. Or I guess it's technically a Nations League break, because we don't have a break during the Gold Cup, which will be another problem for this team because half the roster is going to be involved in one of the teams in the Gold Cup. But I think that summer window is where we should expect this team to really start to hit their stride in terms of playing the style that Losada wants to play. But they're still going to be missing players because of international commitments and things like that, right? And then you go into that kind of final leg, which is the longest leg of the season and the most important leg of the season, when in theory you're getting all the players back. Everybody knows what their job is. You're past the summer transfer window. And to me, I think that's the first time this year where we'll see how well I do at this, but I'm going to try to wait until then to allow myself to set expectations for this team, because it's not going to be pretty to start. I really don't think it is.
So hearing you talk makes me realize that, like, Supporters Shield is not an expectation, right? Like Lasada is probably really focused on the MLS Cup because we, like, as I said, like you can build up to that. And that is kind of, you need to be kind of in momentum.
The Open Cup's not happening either because we're not going to win our first 3 games.
It's okay. We'll have other teams to root for in the Open Cup.
True.
But yeah, I really think, the Supporter Shield is just not kind of going to be in the cards, which probably everyone is like, duh, Sam. But just hearing you talk really kind of brought that into perspective for me.
That is a question, though, is we don't really have an insight on this, but when ownership brought in Lasada, what did they tell him his expectations were?
Yeah.
Obviously this is a team that is historically used to winning trophies. It hasn't been there since 2013 was the last major trophy you won. Gotta love the Open Cup.
Yeah.
But what are the expectations for Lasada going forward over a couple of years? Like you need to be in contention, right? Maybe it's not winning the Supporter Shield as the best team in the league, but you certainly need to win a playoff game.
Yeah, and I think going back to our talk with Jason, that's what I'm getting from that. And just right now, like Jason loved that playoff game. I loved it. The Columbus game was a memory, to use Jason's words. And and I think that's what he wants more of. So that's what I would expect the president, or like the expectations are set. Like you need to make the playoffs.
A home playoff.
Maybe not this year. But definitely next year.
In MLS, the expectation should always be playoffs.
Yeah, but we're talking about a team that finished second to last. It's only, I know, one time, but years ago.
No, we were 15 minutes away from the playoff last year, which was almost historically bad.
Yeah,
so
I think when you couple the fact just how forgiving the MLS playoff structure is, you should get in. But I also think you look at how many injuries we had last year, which dominated this show for most of the season. And we're not starting out great when I look at the list right now. But, I think making the playoffs this year, I think that's a reasonable expectation to have if I'm Jason Levian and I'm talking to potential hires. Yeah, you got to find a way to make the playoffs. Like, there's some bad teams in the East. There are good teams. There are very good teams. You should be in the middle.
I also think it's promising that a lot of the injuries, sorry, Black, but just to touch on injuries, a lot of them are from last season, or they're like surgeries that had to happen in postseason or whatever. Like when you're completely changing the way that you're playing the game and especially upping the tempo and the way that Lasada's doing right now, we're not seeing a lot of new players get injured. And I think that is like hats off to the physio team for being able to keep our players from, upping their they're upping everything and remaining healthy. And I think that looks good. Obviously, just crazy tackles and like during the game, like things happen. But I think that possibly we'll see less of that just because of the way that we're training and the way that the physio team is working with the coach. I don't know how they worked with Ben Olsen, but all signs point towards positive right now.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's a positive thing to not have a lot of these overuse injuries early. We will see as the season wears on. We're 6 weeks in. Team has been off since the end of October. It's too early to say that we're not working the guys too hard or finding the happy medium there. But back to your point, John, I absolutely agree that your baseline has to be making the playoffs. I think we're at the point where half the teams in the league make the playoffs, and there are some not great playoff teams each year.
Yeah,
you can find a way into it even if you do muddle your way through that first third of the season, like you were saying.
Well, and the best part about that model is if we muddle our way through the first third of the season and if we close strong and that's how we get into the playoffs, then you are in the kind of the Seattle mindset of like, in theory, you're playing very well at the end of the season to then make up the points you dropped early when you were hurt, didn't know the style. And then all of a sudden you might be able to go on a run. And you want to talk about fun away day like we talked about with James Graham. But,
Yeah, you look back at like the 2014 DC team that started off on fire, top of the league for the first half of the season, ended up I think finishing second at the Supporter Shield, and still bowed out first round of the playoffs. Look at years like the year we opened Audi Field. You bring Wayne Rooney in halfway through the season, team gets on a tear. You expected a lot more from that playoff run. Yeah. Obviously, it was a frustrating game to be sure, and then the next year, a lot of other things going on off the field, but you can get on a tear and get going late on, and hopefully this team is able to do that. I think we'll withhold judgment at least until we are looking more at that. Now, if we're in wooden spoon contention and it's second week in September, then we're going to have to ask questions. But
speaking of the wooden spoon, I got to throw this in. The USL memes account is pretty hilarious on Twitter. They do a great job, and they tweeted out a picture of the Loudoun United kit for this year and said it looks glorious, and they had a wooden spoon crest on it.
It's like the format of like the World Cup.
It
champions.
was.
Yeah,
It was great.
It was pretty brutal.
All right.
I'm not gonna lie, I might buy one. Just go right into it. Come on.
Well, I mean, back to how we're doing. I don't think preseason was spectacular for DC, but just kind of talking offline a little bit with you all, I think that nobody's really like pushing the panic button right now. Am I correct in that? What do you all think we can pull from these preseason games? They finished up today. I don't think we won a single one of them.
No.
I think we tied
No, we beat
a
Loudoun.
decent amount.
Oh, okay.
We did beat Loudoun.
We beat ourselves. I think we tied a decent amount of them. We lost maybe one or two. So what do you all think we can pull from that?
Well, I will preface all of this with saying we weren't able to watch any of them with a stream from DC or an official account. I believe we may have been able to find bits and pieces some around, but not being able to watch the team really does influence what we're able to cover. But to your point, it's preseason games. The results don't matter. You don't necessarily go into it saying, okay, well, it's 1-1 now. Is this a result that we're happy to carry out? Like, I would expect that they were pushing the whole time. And you work on the situations in practice. So we'll see what that comes in when we actually have games that have meaning. And I don't even know if we've really scheduled on a lineup that is the ideal lineup.
Yeah, I think there's been trialists littered in every single game so far. So, like you said, they don't really matter. They're for fitness and getting looks at guys, and we haven't been able to see. So I don't know how much. It's disheartening that they only were able to beat Loudoun, but I'm not like.
They've made a lot of wholesale changes in some of the games too to try new things out. The one thing I'll say though that we have to keep in mind when we talk about these injuries, it's really hard for me to lay out like who's today's, well, I guess really next weekend's starting 11 versus who's June's starting 11, because it's very different. I mean, we named 3 guys that are 100% in that starting 11 in June when they're healthy, and they're not available right now.
Yeah.
And then you've got new guys that are still in isolation from overseas transfers that we haven't even had a chance to see yet. So I don't even know how you make up a game day 18, or is it 21 again with 5 subs? Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. We have to look into that one.
So I guess should we break down the roster here a little bit? I mean, from what we've seen thus far, it's been largely a 3-4-2-1. In goal, it's been Chris Seitz, and I'll tell you guys, we talked about it quite a bit last season when Bill was out on a couple different stints. I thought Seitz played very well for this team last year. I'm not nearly as nervous as I would have been a couple of years in the past when Hamid was out. I feel pretty comfortable with Seitz in goal. I think he can do enough. I don't know if he's going to stand on his head and single-handedly win a game like Bill Hamid can do, but I also don't know that Lasada is going to set a goalkeeper up to have to do that in the same way that Ben Olsen's style did.
Well, debatable.
Maybe.
When you're like one-on-one,
it's a different set of keeper up from Phil, right? That's true. That's true.
It's not maybe like 1,000 shots a game, but it's potentially like 3 like one-on-ones.
3 on the goalkeeper.
You really have to make
That's
the
true,
save
that's true.
of. Yeah.
Which is fine if you're scoring 4 goals. Then you're doing fine. But you're right. It's probably not a style where one mistake from the keeper is going to mean that you're going to lose 1-0 and the entire approach to it changes. I think we generally believe that Bill Hamid is one of the most excellent keepers in the league and should be in the conversation for the national team. He's probably worth about a goal a game. And if you are actually scoring goals, that can be a major impact. But the problem for DC has not been on keeping the ball out of the back of our own net. Usually you're losing games 1-0, maybe 2-1.
It's been finding the opposing final third, let alone the back of that net, right?
For sure. I mean, that was one of the things watching some of the clips on preseason games. We were scoring lots of goals on set pieces, crosses, people taking advantage of things. And those are opportunities that you're going to get every game. You're going to, as long as you're going forward, you're going to have corner kicks. So seeing them actually finding ways to convert on those is an encouraging sign for sure.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, I guess one of the questions that remains to be seen, because it's news as of a week or so ago that Hamid kind of re-aggravated an injury. So I think the intent was to have him back very soon, and now it's going to be a couple more weeks. So will the team try to sign another keeper to kind of have on the bench, or will it be Kempin who's backing up sites for the first few games?
Yeah, I think it was initially like rumored that DC United would take another look, but I think Hamid's injury is just like a hernia or something like. I mean, nothing is good, but a hernia is very just like, you get in there and fix it and it's done kind of problem.
Yeah.
So I think I heard that the team was not going to look for another one, but TBD. I mean, they could. I don't think they should. I don't think they need to. I think
they need to raise
I think,
the
like you said,
roster
Sites is fine, and Hamid will be back in a few weeks. So.
Well, we also have Kempin too, right? So like we have, and he's
For sure,
experienced from Columbus, so we have a little bit of depth in that area.
Yeah, let's move to the defenders on this roster, because this is where things get very interesting. Birnbaum obviously is out for a few more weeks, had to have a second surgery, which is frustrating as a fan. It's got to be devastating for him as a player and such an important player on this team. Frederick Briant just celebrated his 98th birthday, so happy birthday to Fred. No, just kidding. Fred is obviously...
He might come back on the show.
I hope so. Look, I love Fred, but to ask this guy to continue to anchor a three-man back line for this entire season, I hope he can pull it off. I also hope we have other options to give my man a rest, because it's not an easy thing to do. And Sam, as you alluded to, like, this style puts a lot of pressure on defenders. They're going to be tracking back quite a bit, and that's a lot of extra fitness, as Losada's talked about, that he needs to build up. And so when I look at the back line right now, it's Briant, it's Heinz Ike, and it's Pines. And I don't really see another option in that three-man back line. Am I missing something?
No, we haven't got to look at DeShields, and there's been a trialist in the preseason games playing at one of those center back positions. But I think you're spot on there. I think it's those three, and like like James said earlier, I think it's a big year for Pines because a lot's going to be on his shoulders. It's been kind of a fun transition, because the Olsen era definitely, like, pre-mid was 4-4-2. We super used to it
forever.
And if you asked me 4 years ago, I would have told you playing three center backs is dumb. DC United play two, and that's already too defensive. But we kind of saw Ben Olsen transition to a three in the back, and now we have Hernan, who's going to play. It seems like a full-on three center back in the backs and then two wing backs, but we're not missing the defender there, or not missing a midfielder, because those wing backs are not right back, left back. They're up in the attack. So a lot is going to be on. Almost all the defensive responsibilities on this back three. It's a lot of fun.
I've come to appreciate the three-man back line a lot. I mean, Leicester City have deployed it a few times this year, and I'm so rooted in the 4-4-2, right? I grew up on DC United. I know that style, like, just there's comfort in that. It fits the field well. But when you have three center backs that are physical and they're comfortable with the ball at their feet and they're comfortable pushing forward, it changes the entire dynamic. And then you add two wingbacks that can work the sidelines. It's just so much more explosive. And when you have five quote unquote defenders that are very good at defending as well, that's a better back line than you can get out of a four-man back line in a lot of ways. But you've got to find the right personnel, and they've got to be comfortable working together to make it work.
And I think it's going to be interesting too to see how Losada implements it, because this is the way he wants to play. Whenever Ben made a formation change after lots and lots of experience on previous moves, it was always going to be a second language to him. Ben wanted to play a 4-4-2 no matter what. He shifted a little bit. I guess it was the summer of 17 when you brought in Areola, you brought in a couple of other guys, and you had a formation that made sense to kind of change up and make that diamond in the midfield. But he never really changed too much at the back. I think one time last year we played three at the back, and it was disastrous.
Yeah, it wasn't fun.
It was Russell Canals back there, I think. Yeah,
right.
It was. Oh.
And it was in part required by the injury situation, so you can't put too much on it. But it was never going to be Ben Olsen's first language to say, okay, three guys are at the back, and that's who we're going to lean on. So I'm going to be very interested to see how Losada implements that as somebody who, for lack of a better term, speaks it as a native language. This is how I want to line up my guys, and how he communicates that to the players is going to be fascinating this season.
I think a wrinkle also is that we talked about it as weird for DC United, but it's weird for the league. Most teams in this league come out in a 4-4-2 or some 4-2-3-1, something like that. It's going to be a wrinkle for the league, and I wonder if teams are forced to adapt to it. If he gets it working right, it could be fun tactically for the league.
as a Syracuse basketball fan, I enjoy the fact that you can sometimes deploy a defense that other teams haven't seen before, and there's a benefit to that, and it's especially a benefit when you're not the most talented team out there, which I think is going to be very true for DC United. You're right. If they can get very comfortable in a formation that teams don't regularly play against, that'll be an advantage in and of itself. You pile on the fitness on top of that, and you can cover up some skill deficits with that.
That's an interesting point you make about the talent level in this team. And, we made some acquisitions in the offseason, none that are going to turn heads internationally or, make big money decisions. But even going into last year, you looked at this team and thought it was a team that could function fairly well, at least in that middle level of MLS, outside the top four, maybe going away for a playoff game. And for me, I feel like we're still in that same general situation of a team that you don't expect to be scraping the bottom of the barrel. Now, you're making changes, obviously, with the coaching and playing in a different formation. But I think talent-wise, you're right that they're not going to be outspending the LAFCs and the Atlantas of the world. But the talent is there.
I agree. I think this...
Yeah, that's true.
We haven't made a whole lot of changes to the roster, right? It largely looks the same as last year, but I don't think last year's talent was utilized in the same way, right? Like, Joshua, I'm going to set you up for this one, but Gressel came in and he was phenomenal for Atlanta, right? He was just sending balls in. I was going to say left and right, but really just from the right. And he was getting so many assists, and part of it is obviously having Joseph Martinez up there, but part of it is we just didn't see that any real great opportunities coming from him, and part of that is because of the system. Right. So I think if we have a better system that more plays to the strength of the players, I think that there's potential for these players to rise above potentially our expectations, but at least meet our expectations, because I don't think anyone met our expectations last year.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think we have Gressel down as a midfielder on this, and more as a defender. And these are all classifications. I think that's what everyone else has been putting down. But
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how those guys are employed. Is Moore going to be the left wing back, so he's going to be almost more of a midfielder? Is Gressel going to be... Who plays that right wing position? Is it Areola? That I would consider that part of the defense, that right wing position. But or is it Gressel? It's going to be interesting once they're both back and healthy. But yeah, I think the three center backs are solid. I would love to see one more transfer there. But yeah, it's interesting with the wing backs.
Who's at left wing back then?
Moore. I think that's Moore's position. And I've seen, again, we're all just speculating. I did get to watch the NYCFC game. And then I've seen the tweets and the radio from a couple different ones. And it seems like Moore is a lot more forward, and he used to do that in the 4-4-2.
And he's usually, I remember him putting some good balls in, when the time came. So that'll be fun to see him out there. Obviously COA is still injured along with Paul, so the lineup does kind of right itself for the first couple games. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see, guys is it when you bleed into the attacking side of the roster, is it Assad alongside Flores then, and then you've got Kamara up top, or are you going with more of a traditional 10 and then two strikers?
Well, why don't you read the midfield and then we can get into it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess we did name everybody on the defense. Okay, thanks, Sam. Keep me honest here. So at midfield, obviously Paul Areola is still injured, but definitely back from what was a disastrous loan spell at Swansea, and I had hoped it was bad in the sense that he didn't enjoy being in Wales. As I said on the show, I think it was bad for other reasons, but I'm excited to have him back. Yamil Assad, who I am pegging for a big breakout season again this year, again from his previous breakout seasons, not last year. Russell Canals, Edison Flores, Julian Gressel, Felipe, who's still injured for the time being, but working his way through rehab, Moreno, Moses Nyman, Kevin Paredes, and Yordi Reyna.
Not Gio. But Yordi.
I was going to go with Gio. Reyna, so what does that midfield look like then? Because we've talked about, wing backs, right? So call them defenders, I think it's probably Mora and Gressel, as we've talked about for the first few weeks anyway. What do you do in the middle of the midfield?
Well, it's just two. If we have wing backs, it's just a two-man midfield, and it's really interesting because I think I mean, outside of the wingers in that category,
Is it just a
I think
two-man
we
midfield?
both just tried to stop and do math. You could
Because
do
what
three
about
still,
what
right?
about what are you doing for a
three,
defensive midfielder?
and then the wing backs are like weird, right? So they're defenders.
So it's a 5-2.
You're
That's
talking about doing
7,
a
8
3-4-2-1.
with a 3.
3-4-2-1 is what we have written down for DC.
Okay.
So to me, that's 4 midfielders, right?
Right.
I mean, if you
Two on
count the
wings.
wing backs as midfielders,
Okay.
I'm referring to them as defenders that get forward.
So the 2 are still kind of midfielders, though.
They're actually, yes. So 2 midfielders, like I was saying.
No, but 3-4-2. The 2 are still kind of midfielders.
The 2 are wingers in this situation, and that's how DC United has been lining up.
I see what he's saying. Okay, so you still got to name 4 midfielders.
Yes. 2 of them further forward, 2 of them further back. You have a
I think they're more true wingers than a left midfielder, right midfielder. I think it's a Kamari Smith will be filling that role, or you know, like
Has he in preseason? I think he's been playing up top.
That's how up top as a winger. I think.
Not as a defender, though.
Not as a wing back, but
Yeah.
a winger.
Well,
I
yes,
get
we
you.
have
Yep.
wingers and wingbacks. We're not playing 2 attacking midfields. We're playing. Anyways, I think
I'm about to send it to commercial and see if we can get our own act together here.
I think there's 2 actual midfielders in there, right?
Okay.
Shuffling before, and I think
Who's that?
I think our 2 best midfielders are Moreno and Canales, and I'm interested to see if Nyman is able to bust that up because that's super defensive. I don't think we've ever asked Canales and Moreno to shuttle the ball forward. It'll be
and you don't have Kevin at the moment,
and Felipe's out as
and
well.
Felipe's out as well. Okay, so you've got, in theory, you've got Junior and Russ, and you've got what I would expect to be some very fit legs coming off the bench potentially in Moses Nyman. So what are you doing sort of for your wingers in this situation?
Go ahead.
Sam still looks incredibly skeptical, and I'm just
I don't
laughing
think
at
I
it.
agree with the 3-4-2-1 that
Well,
we have written down.
Sam, we'll go to you next.
which is fundamentally my fault. probably.
so wingers. There's basically they're like second forwards, right?
Well, and do you have Joe and Gressel plugged in at wing back?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I would guess it would be Flores on the left wing as part of that final 2, and then Areola as the other one, or
Well, not on match day 1.
it's gonna be tough days.
I would almost put Assad on the left and throw Flores on the right.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to see because there's a lot of question marks with injuries. There's a lot of question marks at forward because
Who's up top?
we have
We'll
7.
read them out.
Yeah, that's a whole nother list.
Oh, that is a whole nother list. But actually, before we go there, because that's going to take 20 minutes for me to read through the list, Michael and Sam, I want to hear what you're doing in the midfield.
Not what we've been talking about.
All right. Michael, are you playing with the same style we're talking through before we switch?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think you have the 2 wing backs. I think Mora is likely a starter there, and then we talk about these formations like they're static, but if you need to end up having a more defensive look, you can have a more tucking back in and playing in that.
Smash the mic with that defense.
I feel strongly about it. No, but you can kind of shift it around. It's not like you have lines of people moving around. It's not like a foosball table. And I think you do start with Gressel at first on the right. He's had experience playing
that analogy.
in that wing back, moving backwards, forwards. And I think as far as needing additional cover in the middle, I think you do end up doing it with Moreno and Canales. It seems to be the most reasonable setup, and that seems to be how they started today. Again, not being able to watch the game. Apparently, the Red Bulls had a radio feed on it, but we got occasional tweets. Not that we're better.
Yeah, the radio feed was cutting in and out.
So what are you doing at the top of this formation then, in terms of attacking midfielders?
I think for me, I would like to see Assad and Flores probably as the playmakers there, letting them roam around a bit. I think especially when you have that higher position too, you get a lot more freedom for them to do what they want to do. Now, if you have situations where Assad and Flores both want to drift to the left, that's going to be a problem for you. But I think those are the guys that you see as your playmakers who are really going to be that engine in the middle, creating opportunities for people going forward.
So Ryan Johnson, listening on YouTube, says that he expects Kamara and Smith to start against New York City, which he's given Kamari Smith the start, but he's kind of been balling out in this preseason, right?
Look, for our sake, my dude, draft pick, taking up international slot. I listened to Joshua complain about that for months. I hope he kills it this year.
I do too. I do too.
I know you do.
I'm just looking at resources.
Were there Generation Adidas players available?
That's what I heard.
There was multiple. Apparently, there was this kid that no one wanted from Clemson that we've taken, but he scored in preseason. He's doing well, and he's a part of this very extensive forward list that John's gonna have to read soon.
Yeah.
So, again, these players are all based on the DC United website. This is what DC United is saying they are.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's actually going to pan out to be accurate?
So Sam, clearly you're deploying a different formation to start. Walk us through.
Perhaps I
Sammy
didn't
Casball.
look at this doc close enough, and I apologize. I don't know. I think that we play with 5 in the back, and James Graham stayed on our YouTube feed, and he said so it's a 5-2-2-1, which also possibly doesn't feel right. Maybe like a 5-3-1-1, maybe kind of like a.
Well, the difference between a 5-2-2-1 and a 3-4-2-1 isn't that much.
Yeah,
It's just
the same.
where you classify.
It's just what you call them.
Yes, but I think that matters, right? Like when you're talking about just 3 in the back versus 5 in the back with the 2 that push up, I think that is a fundamental way in which you're approaching the game.
Right.
So I don't think that we're just going to start with 3 in the back. I don't think we have 3 defenders who are strong enough for that. If we had Walker Zimmerman, maybe, right? He's an MLS All-Star, but and I love our defenders, but I don't think that we can.
Donovan Pines is there.
Yeah. So talk us
He's
through.
not there
Talk
yet.
us through your lineup.
I mean, I think we play 5 in the back, definitely. I
So
think
who are they?
Well, I think I agree with what you all were saying.
Okay, so same people, but you're not pushing the wingbacks forward as much.
I am, but I think that their job is also to come back more defensively. I think that.
Well, then you need wingers, yeah. So
how does that change the
top three.
then? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the math I've been trying to do in my head.
Yeah,
Several
and
Trulies in,
I've
it's
seen
just
smoke
not
coming out your
working
right ear, and I wasn't sure why that was happening.
I got stuck in the defense, honestly.
there we
but
go.
just fundamentally, I think that when your game plan is to push all the way forward, the mentality also is everyone to know their defensive role. It doesn't mean that everyone's just an offensive player and we just hope to score a frick ton of goals and make it work.
I hope we do that.
I also hope we do that. But I think that you start from the back and you say this is everybody's role, and as we push up, this is how your role shifts. If you play with 3 in the back, I think your mentality is more to hold people in the midfield. And it's less emphasis on the defense and more emphasis on the midfield play. You're not necessarily pushing up as a team in the same way.
Okay, so from a personnel perspective,
from
do
a
you have
personnel
any
perspective, I think
from
you
what
all
we've talked through?
No, from a personnel
Okay,
perspective,
just
I think you all are
deploying
pretty on point. I would love to see how Lasada has them lining up, because you're right. I mean, we watched
everybody's
a little
talking about
bit.
one striker, which is kind of interesting. I obviously haven't gone through the list.
Yeah, but
yet,
when your whole team is flooding forward, it doesn't
Sure.
feel like one striker. I need to see this on the field, but I just think fundamentally when you say 3 in the back versus 5 in the back, it's not just 3 people doing the work in the back.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
when you just have here it is. When you just have 3 in the back, you have more of a solid line in the midfield in front of them. So you can say these are our 3 true mid defenders and the midfield has it covered. But when you say you have 5 in the back, you say these people are also dropping back and helping with the defensive work, and I think that's the reality of what we're going to see this season, as opposed to us trying to shut it down in the midfield. We're trying to shut it down in their offensive third, and when it breaks down, we're coming back to our defensive half to win the ball back, as opposed to stopping that at midfield.
Yeah, and I take your point about mentality as far as what you're telling people is their first responsibility. Either way, you end up having 4 guys centrally and being responsible for playmaking going forward. And in all of this conversation, we haven't talked about Paul's role in this yet, because if we think that Gressel's on the right wing and Moore's on the left wing, your wings are fairly well covered. Do you move Areola to the middle? Does that displace Assad? Does that displace Flores? Do you put him up top? I think we all think that Areola is one of our best players.
Yeah.
You need to see him out there, but where is he slotting?
It almost, to me, then, and this is dangerous, but it almost becomes like a 5-1-3-1 at that point, where
I'm comfortable
you're
with that's
allowed-
math that I couldn't get to,
Yeah,
but I'm
right?
very comfortable with those numbers. Thanks for
Because-
getting there for me.
Here for you, Sam. So then, because what that would allow you to do is then move Flores more as a proper 10. You could keep Yamil out at left. You could slot Areola in at right, and then you could build some sweet partnerships between Mora and Assad and Gressel and
I'm super
Areola.
confident in this.
So you're going-
confident in this.
You're going Marino or Canals at the one.
Yeah, well, and that's where things get interesting, right? Is like, however,
Or Felipe.
This is
Yeah,
our
Felipe.
first disagreement of the year. I disagree. I don't think this team has a true 10, so I don't think you can play as a 10. I think what I think Losada wants to do is have those wingbacks overlap or go inverted off of wingers, because Flores is not a 10. He's not.
That's why you're not playing a 3-4-2-1 though.
we don't
Because you
really
only
10 in
have
that.
2 people in the outside at that point.
The wing. I think the 2 are more wingers than 10s.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
Oh.
So I think
disagree.
there will be an overlap with, because I think Assad is a winger, Yordi is a winger, Flores is a
Then
winger.
you have a completely empty midfield though.
We have 2 in the midfield, and they're gonna have to.
I don't think
that's
that's the
huge.
way.
Yeah,
So-
I think that's where I'm losing you too a little bit, and
I don't think
I don't
we
know.
have a 10.
I think Flores figures it out. I don't think he had a good season last
didn't-
season.
As a
I
10?
think he got.
I don't
a
think he
little
was
bit
good
better.
anywhere on the field last season. He's got to figure it out, and I think it's.
I think he figures it out as a 10 this season. I
doesn't-
think he's given the chance to figure it out.
He doesn't play as a 10 for Peru, or he didn't play like that in Liga MX. I think that's setting him up for. I don't know. Asking your
Well-
DP to be a different player is tough.
Well, here's the beauty.
I mean, we're talking about slotting Paul in everywhere.
Here's the beauty of Losada's system plus having 5 subs this year is I don't think we're running the same system for a full 90, maybe ever this year. I expect a lot of changes to what DC United are running. I expect substitutions to not be 1-for-1 like they were almost every time under Benny. I expect them to be more tactical changes. At that point, you bring somebody in to do a thing, not to 1-for-1 replace somebody. So I could see a game where you actually are kind of running both systems. Like you know, whatever they figure out is their most comfortable, their normal system, fine. But then things happen, goals are scored on either side. You make a change, and then all of a sudden you're flooding into another system. I expect Losada is going to want this team to be fluent in several different ways of playing the game.
And I think one of the things that you'll see as an interesting change is that Losada is working with the personnel that he's got on hand. He has had a chance to impact a little bit since he's been here, but most of the big transfers and big moves we've brought in were done before him. So to some extent, he has a clean slate there. Gressel did not have a great season last year, but he showed that he has had quality in Atlanta. If he doesn't continue to show that quality this year, he might end up sliding back, and you put an Ariel on the right, and that solves a lot of your problems. So to some extent, Losada doesn't have that kind of burden that some of the other, like Ben Olsen would have had, saying, okay, we bought in our most expensive trade within the league ever. We've got to make him play. Losada's looking at this and saying, these are the guys I have. This is what I expect to get from them. So I do think we're going to have a little bit of a difference based on just that one dynamic.
So I want to ask you a little bit, Joshua, because you mentioned Flores not a 10 for Peru, wasn't a 10 in his previous positions. Where is he best deployed in what system based on his past success?
So I don't think there's a different lineup per se. I think they're active. I don't think DC United will play through the middle of the field. I think they're going to try to put numbers on wings and overlap there. So I think ideal situation, no one's injured. You have whoever's starting striker, we don't know.
We'll get there in a second.
We have so many, and then you have
None of them are good.
You have Flores and Areola underneath, but they play out wide, cutting in, right? So there's overlaps there. I don't think either of those players can play the pass into the forward. We haven't seen that. I don't even know if we saw that with Lucho. I don't think he was. 10s cost a lot in this league.
Yeah,
and so I think it'll be more about utilizing space and crossing balls in than driving through the midfield.
I think that you're leaving a gap in the midfield though. Like, who are those balls being crossed into? And then when teams counterattack against us, are they just like streaking through the midfield and flying through?
Well, we have.
Remember, you've got 5 defenders, quote unquote, in this system.
Yeah, but 3
plus
of them are
you've got-
staying back, right?
I don't know that they're going to stay back, and I think that's what I'm expecting to see in Losada's system. Is I think they're going to be pretty far.
So you
forward.
want to talk about asking players to do things they're not comfortable with, though, like Brian, Pines, Birnbaum, DeShields, Heinz, like whoever you want to throw in there, right? Like none of those center backs are comfortable with like streaking up the field and like scoring goals. Maybe Steven, but I mean he's only really comfortable doing it on set pieces. So are you now asking them to completely like leave the back line?
I think you might have misunderstood me a little bit. I don't expect them to be streaking forward like I would expect a wingback to do. But I do expect them to play more advanced.
Yeah, the
DC
line will
United's
be
back
higher.
line typically. Exactly. Yeah, I think the line will be a lot higher. And in front of that line, you're going to have your 2 defensive midfielders as well. You're going to have.
But that's still not leaving anyone in the box to receive the crosses.
Oh, I would think we were addressing your concern about
Defense.
attacking. Yeah, when we're
You're doing
defending,
both at the same time, though.
Well,
right? Because a cross goes in, and you kind of have to assume it's 50-50, and then it's coming back down your throat. So you need to be setting up to score the goal, but you also, in the back of your mind, need to be knowing how you're collapsing backwards.
Right. So you have the forward and the far side winger, like far side attacking midfielder.
So you only have 2 people in the box.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have the overlapping wing back and then a winger, and I think that's how.
I mean, that might be 2 more people than we had in the box all of 2020.
Yeah.
So
True.
I mean,
That sounds right.
I disagree. I also think we haven't seen it on the field, right? So like
Yeah.
a lot is going to come out in this first game. Obviously, like the players are getting used to it and they're understanding it, but we haven't seen it.
The goal that I did see against the NYC, it was Flores out wide crossing the ball into the box, and
was that 2 strikers at that point or no?
I think it was 1 striker.
Okay,
I think it was Kamarni.
because that was Kamarni's goal, right? Yeah.
But again, to go back, just the idea of scoring goals off of crosses is something we haven't had a whole lot of.
Yeah.
Not from run of play, yeah.
Yeah, run play. Like you've been fortunate in set pieces, you've gotten the occasional goal on a counter, but to actually be creating chances, sending crosses in, and putting them away, that's a difference.
And I think what's so fun about the conversation we're having right now is like this is just how close we are to the season starting. Like the conversation we have a week from tonight will be based on 90 minutes of how they actually lined up, how they played, what style they want to do, and we're gonna know a heck of a lot more. But as we talk about players and positions, we haven't talked about our forwards yet.
We kind of have.
There are a lot of them. I don't know how good many of them are, but Ola Kamara is returning. So we got that.
How many goals is he going to score this year, Joshua?
Look, off his track
yeah.
record, which he put a big dent in. Oh, he's not. I don't know if he's the number 1 striker for DC United anymore.
Who do you think is?
I think.
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
Read
go
them
down-
out
go
first.
down
Well,
Just
I'm
read
looking at the list, and some of these people are listed twice. It's because that is how much we have to learn in the next week. But Perez, with the new acquisition from LAFC, Reyna could play forward as a forward. Roberta, Smith, Sorga, who scored today. We've got Griffin Yao. We've actually, I think I missed one of the new acquisitions as well that's not listed here. Who's still in quarantine? Did I not?
Yes.
And then that's Roberta, who just signed. And
I think there's someone
I thought
else,
there was
though.
2, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
and
there's
the
one other one.
Bolivar from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so who's your number 1 striker now?
Yeah, well, and also don't forget the trialist, former DC United great Andy Nahar.
Andy Nahar is going to be a right wing back depth.
All right,
I
so
have
who's
a-
your
Do you
number
think we're
1?
signing him?
I have a. Yeah.
Yes,
We
we're absolutely.
have the slots. We have 5
Oh, yeah,
subs.
that's true.
I think
right.
that's a different conversation. Anyways, I think the number 1 striker is going to be Roberta. I think he's Sorga 2.0. I think they went to a higher league in Europe and found someone who was overperforming.
Which league did he come from?
He came from the Belgian.
Maybe.
Or,
I think he did come from the Belgian league, right?
Yeah,
Because that was the Losada connection.
Yes.
Sorry, came from Estonia. I know that.
Yeah,
Estonia,
and
that's
so
it.
like I like first
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria.
PFC Levski Sofia. So capital of Bulgaria.
And so I like immediately pulled up like the European rankings of the leagues, and it's like Estonia is like the worst league in Europe, unfortunately. And it's great that Sorga tore it up and is not here now. I like Sorga. He scored today, like you said. But I think Roberta has proved it at a higher level. I think that's what the team is going to go for. I wouldn't invest playing minutes in Ola Kamara right now.
Yeah.
He was that bad last year.
Well, and to answer,
I can't disagree. I just love to hear that one. Sorry, go ahead.
well, and to answer James's question in the chat, he's asking if we're going to play 2 strikers at some point this season. I think you probably do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
We're going to be losing games, and we're going to do it.
Again, we're talking about these numbers as being set in stone. They're going to slide around. There's going to be different situations, and if anything, I expect Losada to be more flexible than Ben was as far as saying we need to change it up and having the players in a place where they can do that. So I could certainly see putting 2 guys up top and seeing what happens there, whether that's having 2 push all the way forward, 1 that kind of sits underneath. It'll vary, but I think it'll be situational.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways, depending on, and I don't know enough about Heinz Eich's career, if he can push out wide in a 4-man back line, but it almost makes your first sub easy. if you want to go to 2 up top, you either bring somebody in for one of your 2 defensive midfielders, or you bring somebody in for one of your wing backs, and then you can either fall into a 4-man back line, or you can fall into the 5-1-3 or 5-1-2-2, I guess, at that point, which is going to be interesting. But there's a lot of things that this team can do, and I think a lot of that just kind of falls back to the fitness conversation that we kind of started out this segment on. Is not only are substitutions going to be dictated from, what's happening on the field, what the scoreline is, but at first they're going to be dictated from fitness, and the substitutions you make are going to dictate the style you play.
So is Kamara going to start next Saturday?
Yes.
I think he's the veteran striker, and I think he's been getting minutes in preseason. But I think there's strong options behind him. Maybe not strong as a league wide, but strong in the internal competition.
We suffered through a painful season last year in so many ways. But if I'm a new coach coming in and I look at Ola Kamara like we did a year ago on this show, there's a big upside there. If I'm Losada, I look at last year and I'm like, okay, you missed some chances you should have scored, but also you weren't given a ton of service. So like let's put you in a style. Let's mold you to this style. Let's set you up for more success this year. I think he starts, and I think he has a better year because the bar is pretty damn low.
The bar's low. He's gonna get. Hopefully, he's gonna get more touches. And again, I don't know if I want to invest minutes in Kamara getting back to the normal, right? Because he's like you said, he's done it. He's got the track record, everything in this league. But man, we brought in like 4 different strikers. Hopefully we give some of those guys a chance and they're not just like collecting dust on the bench.
So I like the way you phrase that. You've used the term invest minutes a couple times, and it makes me think of, a year ago, Olsen was here, Ryan Martin in Loudon, and it was, the idea was we're going to play the same system from kind of top to bottom within the DC United mentality, right? I'll be interested to see, does Loudon now adapt more of a Losada type system to keep that mentality of we're gonna play that same system throughout our entire organization? Because when you talk about investing minutes, guys like Kamari Smith could go down and get some serious minutes at Loudon. And if they're playing the same style, now in theory without as many of the COVID concerns as we had last year, that's a good way to keep people fresh. Whereas last year we didn't really have that option. Yeah,
honestly, I think that's the ideal, and I think that's what you would want to see. I don't think we have Losada for long enough to make that actually beneficial. I don't think.
Wait, did you say you don't think he's gonna? Do you mean he's not gonna be with DC United?
I don't think he's gonna. I think he signed a 3-year contract, and like we keep him for that, and then he probably moves back to Europe to a hopefully higher team because he's proved himself here. And I don't think 3 years is enough time. Like we're talking about, like he's working with the same team from last year, right? Ideally, he's able to make his own acquisitions and trades and things like that to make it fit for him. So then when you add like doing that in Loudon also, I think that takes longer than 3 years. So I don't think that he's going to be sending people as fluidly as we've seen in the past.
We've had this conversation in the past about what Loudon is there for. I agree that it's hard to shift the entire makeup of a team, every couple of years based on changing systems. But to my mind, the reason you don't have Loudon because you're looking to win the USL championship.
They're not doing that.
They're just not there, and if they have players that are performing particularly well, they'll often end up on DC United's bench or even on the team for the first team. So to me, I think you do try to do that more aggressively, even if it's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't necessarily have to work. It's the fact that you're getting the repetition and you're getting the work in that system, at least on the top line. Like if you go into a game where you're expecting the other team to play in a certain way and there's a best way to counter it, the coaching staff at Loudon should absolutely work around that.
Yeah.
But their default should probably be having 3 center backs.
I'm interested to see how bought in Ryan Martin is, because that's the one who's going to be making the head coach for Loudon United. If he's bought in on that kind of style, it could transcend Losada. It could be a system thing where, if Losada moves on or if he sucks and we get a new coach, we stick with that kind of ethos and we find a coach that plays 3 in the back, overlapping wing backs, and it could be.
You're right. it's possibly like a larger what does DC United see for the future thing, but that was my thing too, is like Ryan Martin is not just a yes man, right? Like I doubt that he wants to stay at Loudoun for the rest of his career forever, right? So if he's just saying like, I'm going to play this system because Lasada told me to, even though like the manpower we have is not going to fit it at all, I'm just like grooming people to move up, I don't think that's going to help his career, right? So if
I wonder how many conversations they've had.
You're right.
That's a fair
right,
question, right?
right?
Like, how often did Benny and Ryan Martin
But
talk?
also,
How
like,
often
at the end of the day, Lasada doesn't get to tell Ryan Martin what to do. Ryan Martin gets to
Or
tell
does he?
Loudoun what to do.
Well, it might not be Lasada, but it might be the Dave Kaspers or the Jason Levians of the world that
You also kind of need Ryan to buy in, though. Otherwise, I mean, he leaves and you could get someone else, but we haven't seen that happen. So maybe Ryan's totally bought in, or maybe he's like, I also need to prove myself as a coach and like grow my skills. I don't think.
Yeah. And frankly, there's a lot of value to be had in, I mean, obviously Martin's going to get judged on results at Loudoun.
Exactly.
But to be able to say that you got the team where it needed to be, and be able to show growth in a number of different systems, there's certainly value there. Like we talk about coaches as having one locked in system because we're used to seeing Ben Olsen married to his 4-4-2 forever and ever. If you can roll out different sides, like we look at the Premier League, Pep Guardiola will change within the space of 5-10 minutes what he's trying to do there. If you have a coach that is able to do that, there's certainly a value to be had there.
I don't think that he has the the manpower though. Like
right. We're talking about different.
Yeah, so we're talking about like different sports almost when you talk about it like that. So I think that he a little bit also needs to stick to his own guns, right? And maybe say we're going to expand like this a little bit, but I don't see him like completely flipping mentalities just because that's what the DC United head coach of the time is doing.
The only thing I'll say to that is Loudoun and most USL Championship teams build their rosters very late before the season starts. I mean, Loudoun are still signing talent today. So all I'm trying to say there is the roster that Loudoun had when Lasada was first signed probably wasn't 11 people, with the way contracts work, right? So I think they do have the flexibility to kind of build a roster season over season based on the guys they bring in, the guys they re-sign, the youth they promote. All that to say, I think they have a little more flexibility than an MLS team to kind of totally flip the way they play year over year.
Yeah, and I think it would be super valuable to have more of the idea of switching. Sin Pine's down for a couple weeks. Obviously, he's past that now, but like, Kamari Smith or someone, and have them play the same position, and be ready to go. Come back to the senior team next week because we need you because we have.
I mean, I'm not denying that that's important. I'm just saying that I don't think that we're going to see it to the extent that we've seen it in the past.
Time will tell. We're going to learn a lot over the next few weeks, that's for sure. So, Sam, are you starting Kamara up top? I don't know if you answered.
Sure.
Sam's looking at this lineup like, I don't know, good options here. I guess I'll pick him.
I guess so. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Smith get a decent amount of minutes to start off with.
I think Kamari Smith is absolutely going to play next weekend. I don't know if he'll
Yeah.
start, but it'll be interesting to see if he comes in as a 1-for-1. Or
I also think that possibly if you are going into it knowing that players can only play 60 minutes and that you're not expecting to win a bunch of the first games, I think that maybe the starting lineup the first couple games isn't going to mean what it usually means, like going into the last stretch of the season. I think he's probably still learning the team and kind of figuring out who works in which system, how. So if we saw a starting lineup next weekend, I don't think that means that like those are Lasada's favorite 11 players.
No, when we see a starting lineup next weekend.
We will see a starting lineup next weekend. So, look, somehow we're already 90-plus minutes into this show, so we're gonna do the abbreviated version of the rest of the show notes here. But I want to talk a little bit about the schedule this year. We talked with James earlier about how excited we are when the schedule drops. For DC United and I mean for most of the league, there was a cool Reddit article that kind of broke down how they did most of the geography this year. But we're playing almost exclusively Eastern Conference opponents. We talked about this a little bit. It's Minnesota at home, it's San Jose on the road, and it's the Eastern Conference. There's a break for the Nations League in early June, which I kind of talked about how I look at the season kind of in 3 windows. Playoffs are back to 7 teams in the East, so that's
somewhat reasonable now.
Yeah, more reasonable and a little more difficult to make. So I think I was still kind of under the mindset that almost everybody gets a trophy earlier, but it's like half the people get a trophy now. Those begin in mid-December. Rivalry week this year has us with Philly and Atlanta.
Classics.
Which is ludicrous. However, we do get the Atlantic Cup 3 games again this year, which is exciting. It's a weekday in DC, weekend in Jersey, and I think there's another game in there somewhere. But that's exciting. I'm glad to see that that's back to 3.
Me too.
Several international windows are honored throughout this schedule, but guys, it's a disaster with FIFA breaks this year. We talked about how loaded the U.S. schedule is, but CONMEBOL has an entire window of World Cup qualifying to make up, which impacts a couple of our players. So it's going to be interesting, but I'll ask you guys, what is the game you're most excited for? You only get to pick one, so think very, very hard about it. Sam, I'm going to you first.
I don't know. I think I'm just most excited for this first game that we get to go to, right? Like, I think there's going to be so much throughout the season, right? Yeah. It's going to, like, ebb and flow. So I think right now I'm just really excited to get back in the stadium.
Michael Black.
For me...
I'm pulling up the schedule myself, too.
Lots of games I'm excited about. I think for me, hosting Toronto July 3rd, day before the 4th, I am hopeful that things will continue to trend upwards, that we'll perhaps be at higher capacity numbers there. I think that will be a good sign of where we're at as a team, playing a Toronto team that's changing things up as well. I think that I'm very interested in seeing, and obviously we've got a lot of away days penciled in our calendars as well, but I think probably DC versus Toronto on July 3rd.
It's a good shout. Joshua.
I think I might be stomping or stepping over yours, but I think it's Atlanta for the head coaches. Both teams brought in Argentine managers who are up and coming, and Atlanta were a better roster build, a better team the past few years, but DC United always were able to beat them off of grit and stuff. It'll be really interesting to see as DC United transitions away from grit into more of an attacking focus, if DC United is still able to get one over on Atlanta.
There could be a lot of goals in that game.
Yeah, a ridiculous amount of goals.
Which Atlanta game was that?
I'll go with my birthday one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's going to be
9/18 at Atlanta.
That's Atlanta way. Oh man, you guys took a lot of the big ones I'm excited about. I mean, Sam for sure. Just the opener, right? It's like thank God for we're going to be back. Y'all know I love away days, so I could get behind any away day. But I told you all you can only pick one, so I'm only pick one. It's actually a home date, and I kind of pulled it randomly. It's late August, and we play Atlanta at home. And I picked it for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is everything you talked about, Joshua. I think games against Atlanta this year are going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be big games, and they're going to be important in the standings. I also have that game kind of circled as like that could be when we see as close to a full house as we get this year at Audi Field. It's a Saturday. It's late in August. So the place could be rocking. As excited as I am for this weekend, I'm excited for the closer and closer we get to the full house crowds and the back to normal because, man, I think Losada is going to have this team playing really fun soccer, and DC crowds are lit when we're playing really fun soccer.
Yeah, good times.
So, when we talk about a lot of that stuff, kind of a couple questions tied in one. How long do you think it's going to take Losada to kind of get this team on track playing his style? And what is your most realistic goal for the season? If you're in the locker room, midweek this week, you had a hard practice and you're laying out expectations for the team, what's that look like?
So I'm going to add to that second question that we had a viewer on Twitch kind of ask. At the very beginning of the episode, we were talking about, like, obviously we're going to make playoffs. That's obviously the goal, right? And he was kind of questioning whether or not making playoffs is the most realistic goal versus, like, having a solid DC United identity at the end. And he and I were kind of going back and forth about whether or not you could do both of those things.
Yeah, I'll go because I think this is the most negative answer, hopefully. I hope you guys are more positive, but I think it takes the entire season. I don't think Losada is able to change the culture and get the team playing the way he wants. And that's okay. Like, as long as we see enough promise in there, as long as we see flashes of glory with Yao and stuff overlapping with Gressel and stuff, I think that's fine. it'll be an improvement over last year. But if I'm predicting where DC United end this year, it's probably a little bit out of the playoffs. But it's a fun year, and we enjoy it.
I will just straight disagree with that. I think that the team has already bought in. I think that at the end of last season, the team was out of Ben Olsen's mentality. So they already were.
Where they finished in the East, Sam?
Okay. You're right. Losada wasn't there.
No, I'm just asking, where are they going to finish in the East?
Oh, in playoff position.
So
top 7. Yeah. Like, I think that I don't think that it was a chore for them to embrace a new coach's mentality. Meeting his standards are different than embracing mentality, right? Like, the team was already bought in. They were bought in last season before he was announced.
My questions aren't with buy-in or emotions or anything.
Well, then can you repeat?
We're talking about what is the goal?
The goal for this season is to play well underneath Losada, and I think that's going to take the entire season.
So I think what I hear you say is the goal is to establish Losada ball.
Establish Losada ball.
I think that we can do that by mid-season and be in playoff position by the end.
So Sam, what's your goal for the season this year?
Make playoffs.
Okay, Michael.
I think that by mid-season, again, that probably after that initial Nations League break, once guys get healthy, I think at that point you're going to see flashes of, as you said, Losada ball. I don't think it will be a week in, week out thing that works until at least August, September. And if you're waiting that long, you're probably leaving it a little bit late. So where do I expect the team to finish? I expect it'll probably be 8th or 9th. But it would not surprise me if they do get on things late. You've got 4 out of your last 6 games at home. You've got an opportunity to make a run there. You basically need to be just top half of your conference to make the playoffs. So it would not surprise me if they end up 7th, but I'm probably going to pick them to finish 8th. And I think that's okay. I think we've seen with Ben Olsen that the front office is willing to give you a lot of rope to work with. I don't think we said this is a 3-year contract. I don't even think that if we get to middle of next year and you're still kind of muddling through, then you start to ask questions. But I don't think that at any point you look at this and say the Losada experiment is done this season.
Yeah, before we get to, I totally agree with that. And before we get to my goal for the season, one of the things you brought up, Sam, you alluded to earlier, and I failed to hone us in on it. Losada signing a 3-year contract. Sam, you mentioned you thought that was primarily, alluded to the fact at least that was primarily on Losada saying like, hey, I'm going to come to this league for a few years, I'm going to kick some butt, and I'm going to get a better deal in Europe. Is that, because that caught me by surprise a little bit. I didn't quite see it that way, and maybe that's not quite what you meant. To me, I actually thought I saw the 3-year deal as more of a kind of mutual, like, he's coming to the league for the first time. He's got his, preconceived notions of what it's going to be like, but also DC United hasn't hired a head coach in 20 years, it feels like. So maybe 3 years is kind of a middle ground. But I think Losada really wants to be in MLS, and I guess I could see him signing an extension here and not necessarily popping smoke. I want to go a little deeper on that. So what did you mean? So
I would love that, first of all, just to put on the record. I would love, let's see how I guess he plays and the season goes. But I'm optimistic. Where my saying that came from was, obviously I wasn't as familiar with him prior to signing him. But I think, I'm sorry, beer shot. That one. They were shocked to see him leave.
You should have to drink a beer and do a shot every time you call it a beer shot. I can't
do that.
That should go for everybody.
Agreed.
Can't do that. So I think they were shocked to see him leave, and they were especially shocked to see him leave for DC United. I think that they kind of saw that he was looking towards his next steps, but from the articles that I read, people thought that was going to be somewhere else in Europe, to a lower tier Champions League team, either one that already consistently makes the Champions League or one that's a little bit on the fringes, so then he could coach his way into one of the bigger teams in Europe. I think that him coming to MLS, was a shock for a lot of people. We talked on the show about how we guessed that he was seeing the potential in MLS, and this is kind of the forefront of a wave of people really seeing that this is not just a retirement league, but it's also not just a development league, right? It's somewhere in the middle, and you can gain valuable experience earlier in your career, player or coach, and then kind of move on. I don't think any of us would say that MLS is like the top tier goal necessarily of like the top players or coaches. But that's where me saying 3 years and then he's out is probably a fair assessment, because I don't think that he's trying to like end his career in MLS. I think that he could have gone somewhere else in Europe. He decided that this was the next best space for him, possibly because people underestimate the league, and he was like, let me come here and like dominate, or at least show that I can flip a team on its head and make it super successful, even if he doesn't get a trophy with us, and then jump to that next stage.
I think that's a great breakdown out of, I mean, in your mind, was 3 years what he wanted? Was that what the team wanted, or was that just kind of a middle ground then?
I think it's just kind of a fair assessment of 3 years of a coach to, like, you know, the first year you're possibly figuring out, there aren't, you know, your expectations are kind of middle of the ground regardless. The second year is like really, you get the ground running, you probably have a lot of the same guys under you, you're really making the push, and then the third year is like probably where you really go for the trophy, and then you kind of peace out and maybe go somewhere else.
Joshua?
I hear you, and I think there is the potential for that. There's not the precedent though, so I'm
think
cautious.
he's setting the precedent.
That would be the dream scenario for DC United, right?
Yeah, I think if he sets the precedent, everyone wins.
Right, because the good coaches in MLS have gone on to national teams. That's what we've seen. Tata's with Mexico. De Boer somehow got to the Netherlands. Caleb.
Hold on, good coaches in De Boer is not.
I mean, those are the only exports that MLS has produced.
That's not true. Jesse Marsh.
Jesse Marsh has gone to a sister club. But that's about it. Like Bruce has done the national team, yeah. Like,
and you rarely see international coaches come in and immediately have success. Like, when was the last time one of those won?
Other than Tata,
and I think that's his opportunity. I think that's where he's seeing, I can come in and be the first one to do this. And maybe this is he did like a conference with season ticket members, so maybe that's where I'm also drawing from. But he kind of, that's where he talked about there being so much potential in MLS, and him actually being a little bit more familiar with the league than I think anyone anticipated. He had been to MLS games before. So I think he saw that there was potential here. And maybe that, you know, no like international coaches have won a trophy. Maybe that's because not a lot of them are coming here, right? We don't get the best of them coming here and trying to make a difference. We get the ones who can't find a team elsewhere, or, you know, or are using it as a stepping stone, but dip out before they get to that next step of winning a trophy. So I think that's where he saw the potential to come here and really make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's what he saw. I think it takes a lot to get there, though. I think MLS or DC United would have to do a lot more than just make the playoffs to make that happen. And I know that's their goal, and hopefully they achieve it.
Well, I don't want to duck out on answering my own question. So in terms of
so honest,
my goal for DC United this season, I want them to rise to the challenge that Losada's thrown down a few times, and that's to make us as fans essentially proud to be DC United fans again. The games are fun, the games are entertaining, the team has an identity, everyone knows what it means to be DC United again, and we enjoy and look forward to games again. And I think if that happens, regardless of whether we make the playoffs or whatnot, I think that would do just wonders for this community, for this fan base. I mean, there were times last year, you know, we talked about it on this show, where it was brutal to just even think about like, man, we got to watch a DC United game tonight. They're going to get smashed. It's going to be boring. We got to talk about it. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to go through that again, right? And I think I think he's saying all the right things, and I think he's saying all the right things even more than he knows, because there's so many of us supporters who've been through this for so long that we just want to get back to, like, when we wear the crest, we know what it stands for, we know what it means, and it's a solid team. And like, hey, maybe we don't win every game, maybe we don't make the playoffs this year, but DC United has an identity, and we live up to that. And I think if we can do that this year, we can talk more about trophies and playoffs and stuff in 2022.
So where does DC United finish this year?
Man, I don't know. I look at the East, and it's like, you know, there's some teams that are clearly good, but, you know, teams like the Union are getting CONCACAF'd right now, so, like, where are they going to finish, right? I look at some teams I think overperformed last year. Hello, Orlando. So I don't know.
Orlando is legit.
I still think, well, I don't know. Is DK going to come back?
They haven't sold him.
Well,
and what are they going to do with the $20 million when they do?
They might just pay off the loan at Exploria Stadium. Yeah, that's true, too. look, I think it's going to be a classic. They're going to be above and below the red line, quite a bit. But you said it. It's like they got 4 of the last 6 at home. I think they're going to be hitting their stride late in the season. I think they eke into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think if this team ekes into the playoffs at the end of the year, they won't be backing in. I think they'll be playing their best soccer of the season at that point. And I would be a little nervous, if I'm the team that draws DC United at that point, if things go the way that I think they're going to go this year. I'm not saying we're going to win the title, but I think we're going to be playing good soccer at the end of the year. It's going to take a long time to get there. But, I don't know. But it could go either way. There's only 7 teams that make it now, so they could go on a hard charge at the end of the season and finish 9th because they could be bottom of the barrel for a long time. It could happen, but, yeah, I don't know. I think they'll find a way to get in.
Fair.
All right, well, there's a lot of other words on this sheet, and I thank you guys for pulling it together, but we're going on 2 hours, so is there anything we've missed that we want to cover prior to next weekend? And I'll talk through a little bit about what our plans look like for the season.
Rapid fire. You guys asked James Graham, or John, you asked James Graham, who's the Golden Boot this year? And you guys roasted me last year because I thought it would be Olaf, which he did.
Yeah, but you said it at 15.
Golden Boot, John, go.
Oh, man, this is
Wait,
hard.
are we doing Golden Boot or are we doing like MVP of the season? That's what we asked James Graham.
We
Nah,
asked
we
them both.
asked them both. So Golden Boot, Edson Flores.
I just want to have all this in the cloud.
Yo, that's a. I almost said that. That's a good shout.
That's a random shout.
I was feeling Assad, but since you took Assad, I'll go with Areola.
I'm going with Ariel as well.
All right, MVP Joshua.
MVP Julian Gressel. Too many assists.
Go back to the roster. That was acceptable.
Michael Black.
Emil.
MVP.
Yeah.
No thought. I hope so.
Out of the doghouse the whole year, apparently.
Yeah. Oh man, I might have to get a jersey if he never goes to the doghouse. I don't know if I can afford a jersey these days.
I think Pines.
Donovan Pines. Good shout. Damn it, I have to answer now. Julian Gressel.
Yeah.
All right. Fair.
I think those answers tell you how little we know about what this team's going to look
Yes,
like this year, which makes it so fun.
I would love to revisit this mid-season.
Yeah, we should.
And see
Yeah,
where
we
it
should.
is.
I think these answers show us that we expect to be more attacking.
Yeah.
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 Because how many seasons would you have gone into the year expecting it to be Bill Hamid standing on his head? And
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this podcast right now live, or you're listening it via podcast, tweet us if you're listening it to it post. If you're in,
Yeah, we
now,
wanna know.
Get it now, and then later in the show or later in the season, you can tell us we're all idiots and that you were right.
Yeah, because here's the
and we'll
skinny.
shout you.
You can't tell us in August, right, that you picked somebody else and we don't have it on the record. You got to get on the record today.
So I would say tweet us so everyone else can see
Yeah,
it
exactly.
too, because this chat's about to go away. So definitely tweet us. I'll say that Loudon is starting in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Man, they got the shaft on the schedule this year. It's like I'm excited to get back out to Segra, but like they only got like 5 Saturday games.
Yeah.
They have a game every single day of the week this year, I think.
That's crazy.
The schedule's bananas.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to watching them, hopefully getting out for a couple. Spirit started their season today, the Challenge Cup, actually, and then they're doing the season.
Does that count as part of the regular season now, or no, or sort of? Or?
It's like
I
an
just
MLS
totally
back
said
schedule.
something there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
It's weird.
Unfortunately, they lost today to North Carolina 3-2. We had the first half up, and then we lost the feed.
Tristan Rodman goal.
Sam made us drop El Clasico, but Real won, so it's all good.
I know.
I'll shout out. We talked on it a little bit, but Open Cup, which we all know and love. The 8 teams that make it from the MLS.
God bless.
Is going to be decided after the first 3 weeks. So we have 3 tough games, including one trip across the country. But it would be amazing to find ourselves playing in the Open Cup with needing 3 wins, 4 wins to find ourselves back in CONCACAF Champions League. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, what I wouldn't give to get back in the Open Cup, especially in this small format. But I want to talk a little bit about what we've got in store this season. So we're fully committed to our traditional post-game shows for 2021. I signed up for that before they moved the San Jose game to 11 p.m. So,
But we're committed.
we
we had one last season too.
Oh God, yeah, we did. But yeah, that's our plan. So we'll be back live after every game. I asked you guys to bear with us a little bit this season, especially at the beginning of the year, because there's so many moving parts. You know, we talked about us being excited to be back in the stands next weekend, but that adds a layer of complexity where we've got to then leave the stadium based on their COVID protocols, which will be very different than normal. They're probably going to go section by section. So I doubt we'll get out of there right as soon as the final whistle goes. And then we've got to get to a place where we can do the show. And so at least at the beginning of the season for home games, we're probably going to be anywhere between a half hour and 60 minutes post-game before we get on the air. But we will be bringing you those games. We hope to continue to bring post-game press conferences.
And I'll say follow us on Twitter because we'll be tweeting updates and letting you all know when we're going to be coming live.
And if you listen to us as a podcast, then your experience won't change. You'll hear us the next day. We're hoping this year to do several away games as conditions allow, which will be a whole nother adventure in how we produce content, but we're looking forward to it. And the other thing that we're really excited to add is some of our bonus content this year, which was something that we experimented a little bit out of necessity last year when we were kind of in the coronavirus hiatus, but this year we're looking forward to some bonus episodes where we talk to long form conversations with DC United legends, with people who helped bring this team alive, whether that was in the past or whether that's today. And so if you're still sticking with us today, we've got a show coming out in a few weeks. Just last night we had the chance to talk to John Harkes, which was just an incredible experience, I think, for the four of us. It was a really enlightening conversation, and we can't wait to share that with you. And you'll see more content like that this year. And then the final thing we're excited about this year is as we do the road trips, we talked a little bit about kind of like a road trip city guide that we'd like to bring to you guys from the DC United perspective. Credit to Joshua for this idea, and we look forward to sharing that as we go to a couple cities and kind of take in DC United from the away fan experience.
Yeah, let us know if you're interested in that, or you have any particular stuff that someone you'd like to hear from, or some city you'd like to learn about, and we'll try to get that done for you guys.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Yeah, just let us know you want to see, and we'll try to make it happen.
And we'll definitely be sharing as we have plans to go to away games. We'll share that through our social channels. We'd love to hang out with you guys pregame, postgame, whatever. If you're in town or if you're making the trip, I think. We talked about what game we're most excited for, but man, I'm just excited to see people again this year, to be able to see fans and talk about the team. No matter what happens on the field, I think it's going to be a fun year.
And great to see you guys as well.
Yeah. Yep.
It's been far too long. I might have to go back and look when the heck we did a show in person again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it was a fun one, though. I'm excited to write down these predictions and then just all call each other out towards the middle and end of the season.
I just can't wait to get the game started. Bill's excited too. Yeah. Joshua, any thoughts on the season before we wrap things up?
I just can't wait to do this with you guys again in a week's time. Let's do it for real. Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's been tried and true. The DC United post-game podcast, which will actually be post-game in just about a week's time. We appreciate hanging out with y'all, and we will talk very, very soon.